Stephanie Foster. I think we're going to get started because we have a limited amount of time with great speakers. And so as people join, we will certainly welcome them to this presentation and this great conversation around the critical importance of girls' education to really driving all the positive outcomes that we all seek in terms of gender equality, women's leadership, and the ability of girls and young women to fully realize their potential. So my name is Stephanie Foster. I am a founder of Smash Strategies and have recently written this book called Take Action for Women and Girls. Here we're talking about taking action for girls. Just to set the scene a little bit for this conversation with 4 leaders in the girls' education world, we know that today, or actually yesterday, was the 10th anniversary of the International Day of the Girl, which is really a day that helps us all focus on the power and potential of girls and young women and what we need to do to really unleash that potential, how we can address the obstacles and challenges that girls face and that institutions face in ensuring that they have equal access to all of the institutions that are available to them, again, whether in education or the corporate sector or the public sector. So I'm joined today by 4 panelists who are going to talk about the obstacles that girls face to education and what they're doing specifically through their organizations to address those obstacles. And I'm going to introduce them in a minute, but I want to just start by saying that obviously we all know that education is a fundamental right, but it's key to these critical outcomes. Better educated young women and girls are healthier, they earn more, they have more agency over their lives. And we need to ensure that girls stay in school through primary, secondary, and then of course, college, should they decide to attend college. 129 million girls globally are not in school. We know that this increases the risk of child marriage, and that we know that it increases the risk of many, many other negative outcomes. So with that, I'm going to introduce our panelists. We can go to the first slide there. Our first panelist is Monica Brile, who's an adult volunteer development manager at Girl Scouts of the nation's capital, which is here in the DC area. I'm not going to read her bio, but just to say that she has been engaged in the training and recognition of about 30,000 adult members of Girl Scouts who then engage with Girl Scouts who are young women and girls throughout the DC area. So thank you to Monica and to the Girl Scouts, of course, for everything that they do. Our second speaker is Bailey Lucian, who is the Director of Programs and Impact at Girl Up, which many of you may know is an initiative of the UN Foundation that really has worked with training and mentoring teenage girls from around the world to be change makers for gender equality. So Bailey, thank you very much for your participation. Third, we have Kakenya Nataya, who I've known for many years, the founder and president of Kakenya's Dream. I've had the privilege of visiting her school, and so I hope she talks a lot about that school and what she has done to engage her community in Kenya around girls' education and the need for girls' education to really drive change and prosperity and security in her community. And then last but not least, of course, I have Karima Turner, the program director, Girls for a Change, who has been very active, working particularly with young Black girls and young women here in the United States. So thank you all so much for joining me today for this conversation. I'm just going to dive right in because I think people will learn the most from hearing from you. So I wanted to start and ask each of you, I'm going to start with you, Monica, and then kind of just move around the room for the first question. And I think we probably don't need the slide right now so everyone can see the speakers, is really talking about through your advocacy experience and work, what have you seen are the greatest obstacles to girls' equal access to education? And then just so the listeners know, we're then going to move to the second question, which will get us to the very important question of what we can all do. But I think it's important to sort of lay out from the outset what the challenges are before we dive into what the speakers and their organizations are doing, and then what we can do. So Monica, I'm going to start with you, and then I'll probably go to Bailey next. So Monica, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and very much appreciate the invitation to join you today, Stephanie, and with all of these other fabulous advocates for girls' empowerment. And of course, that's exactly what we're doing with Girl Scouts, that program, really offering the opportunities for girls to see that they can have leadership opportunities, that they can really make a difference in their community, and they can build a sisterhood, a community within their troops, within the broader structure of the organization, to see that they can make change. And you know, the obstacles, I think, is recognizing that, you know, this that our youth have these, you know, they see that there are issues in the world, that they can actually feel empowered and engaged to actually make a difference and learn those skills. How do I go out and see that there are issues within my community and actually take action and take the steps to make those opportunities to develop programs and work together in order to make a difference in my community, and then move forward and figure out, as I'm growing up, as I'm becoming a young woman, moving up and you know, developing the tools and the strengths and the techniques to bring that to my adult life. Sorry, Stephanie, I believe you're muted.
I sense that one of the obstacles is the sense that they don't necessarily think they can make a difference.
Indeed. Absolutely. And recognizing that, you know, that yes, even as just an individual, as a brownie, as a first grader, you're able to, you know, identify an issue and actually take steps to, you know, alleviate some sort of issue in your community.
Great, thanks. Bailey, next to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stephanie, and it's a pleasure to be here today. And on behalf of Girl Up, we are a girls leadership initiative that spans the globe. We've had over 6,000 Girl Up clubs be started by groups of youth in over 150 different countries around the world. So what we hear from our youth and what we hear from our membership on what are the challenges and the barriers that they're facing when it comes to equal access to education, more often than not, we hear a lot of stories about stereotype threat and gender-based biases that start in their lives as early as they can remember. Being compared to their male family members or male community members of the same age, and being presented with limited beliefs from their community and from even their families and even their educators, right? The people who we would expect to really be encouraging them are oftentimes some of the folks who are putting on those stereotypes and those limited gender-based biases on youth. So that's really what we hear. We also hear that access to funding is really important when it comes to girls' access to education. Oftentimes than not, attending a school is not free. There are costs associated, whether that's uniforms, funding for books, funding for transportation to get to and from the institution of learning. And unfortunately, in these dire economic situations, oftentimes girls are asked to take on jobs to provide family income rather than continuing their education. We also hear from our youth that access to menstrual products and access to bathrooms and access to clean water are prohibitive in equal access to education. In fact, one of our affiliates, Girl Up Brazil, is currently doing a lot of work on this subject, advocating to pass laws and national laws in Brazil to provide menstruation products to ensure that every public school has running water that's clean, and a gender segregated bathroom that someone would feel comfortable going to. We also hear that the pandemic has taken a huge toll on girls' access to education. When it comes to schools being closed, oftentimes for prolonged periods in communities where the option to go virtual is not accessible, and where that was not part of the reality for a lot of students, whether that was access to Wi-Fi or access to a Wi-Fi enabled device or access to a quiet room in a home where many family members are at once. We also hear from our leaders that climate change related realities impact equal access to education. And we know that climate change is taking the biggest toll on girls. Also, girls realizing their own leadership identity. I think that's what our first panelist was just touching on as well. And I'm a big believer in the famous scholar Adrienne Rich's quote that you have to claim your education. It's not a passive receiving. You have to interrogate it. You have to claim it. And then I would just also point out that even here in the US, it's only been 40 years that women and men have been enrolled in American colleges in equal numbers. Only 40 years. It's really just a drop in the bucket. So that's really what we hear from a global perspective from our members.
Yeah, that's a good sort of overview of the many challenges and why so important to the next, as we go into the next phase after our next two speakers, really giving people a sense of what you're doing and what they can do to address those challenges. But I'm going to turn to Kakenya next and then Karima to round this out about what they see in terms of the challenges based on their experience. So Kakenya.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, and I'm grateful to be at this panel and great speakers that are lined up to speak about the issues that we work with so dearly, supporting our girls and ensuring that they achieve their fullest potential and that they have equal access to education in all forms. I think I want to focus on the challenges that small organizations that are at the critical endpoint of actually providing services to young people. Often they are seen as small, and I think somebody was talking about funding, and the systems that exist do not actually fit in to support their capacity building. So one is that those organizations, I can consider even our own Kakenya's Dream, we are at the most rural place that it's not easy to access. And to get to us, sometimes funders are trying to say, I want to do a visit, but it's not a one-day visit, it's a two-day visit. And because we have a system that we are hurrying up, I think there's a system in the development world that we are hurrying up, everything is a hurry. And we forget that empowering girls, reaching girls is not a hurry thing. It's not like you fix them into a certain timeline. And I think the biggest is to look at, we are dealing with social norms, we are dealing with cultural norms. Those are things that do not adapt into a 1-year project or a 2-year project or a 3-year project. So, having commitment and people that are willing to go to that extra length and actually reaching to the most, unreached places throughout the world. And I think that when we see the girls that are cut out, as Bailey was talking about, lack of sanitary pads, those are girls that don't have access to, all that the basic needs that are. So I think there is a big need that, we all need to understand that working with girls, it takes time. And all of us kind of like in the global world that people who are passionate about working with girls, we need to acknowledge that. And I think and it's kind of a general thing. We want just to we put girls this year to school, we have educated them and we move on. They're kind of a number. Girls are not a number, and I'll talk about a little bit about our programming later. It has to be holistic. It's a mental issues, it's the health issues, it's the educational. I mean, it's a whole comprehensive programming that I think we need to really start building. One, building capacity for organizations that are at the actual critical points of supporting the girls, and bringing funding to that group of organizations. And then we need to think about how we measure impact. And then the big one that I hear, how to scale. We don't have to scale everything. The goal is to be able to share our learnings, to be able to empower others, and to be able to really learn from each other. And I think that's where we really get to make a big impact into the field. So mine's kind of just that building collaboration. There needs to be more time for collaborations. So there's a lot in terms of capacity building, collaboration, sharing, experiences that is missing. And it is, we know what girls need, we know what is missing. And I think it's time that we move and create a system that actually works. And that system starts from those in the village that have never been reached to going up. Thank you.
Well, I think you raised some very interesting issues around, and having been to your school, your village, you're right. It's not a, drive 30 minutes, kind of get there, tour around in 30, no. But that's the power of it, because there are so many young women and girls around the world who live in analogous places, right, that are not easy to reach. And so I think that's a very important point. And you raise the issue of sort of sustained effort over time, which I think is also a big issue. So yeah, those are things that maybe hopefully we have a little time to go back to, or maybe in the Q&A, because I think they're really critical. So anyway, Karima, over to you from Girls for a Change.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for having me on this panel, Stephanie. So I am with Girls for a Change, and we are an organization whose mission is to prepare Black girls for the world and the world for Black girls. And I would just talk a little bit about an obstacle that we see often in the schools and dealing with the children is the adultification of girls specifically, and specifically Black girls in the schools. And I think that, without addressing the adultification, we won't be able to stand in the gap that these girls face for education and resources. And, when girls are adultified, it gives people a harder time to remember that these girls still need guidance. And addressing this in the classrooms allows for us to give them a voice to speak up. And to speak up and let people know that they need assistance and they need to access to these resources and transportation. And, I believe someone spoke about financial barriers, and, working for a nonprofit organization and trying to connect with schools is always, the need for grants and different financial support in that sense. So I would say, again, one of the biggest obstacles is the adultification of these young girls in schools. Without targeting that and addressing that, it would not be any way to move forward without addressing that these are still children who need our assistance and who need support and guidance from many organizations in the community, and not just Girls for a Change.
So can you, just because I think I understand what you mean by adultification, but maybe just talk a little bit or give an example for our listeners about, what that means, because I think it's a very important point, and I don't want people to miss kind of the sense of what that actually means on a, say, daily basis, or in a girl's life, young girl's life, or young woman's life.
So for example, in a young girl's life, adultification, I will address maybe how we talk about dress code, and how in the schools, they place this big focus on dress code and how, it's distracting to teachers and males and things like that. And so if you are placing those barriers on students, how would they feel comfortable in learning and getting resources to education and the resources that are provided to them all around the community?
Got it. Okay, good example. I'm going to move to the next question, and I'm actually going to start with Kakenya this time and kind of loop around. I think one of the most important things there are tremendous challenges. I mean, and they're, interestingly, some are very context specific, and some are very universal, which I think is kind of the way of the world, right? For all of our commonality, there are always unique things. And then for all of our differences, there's always commonality. But I'd like it if each of you, I'll go to Kakenya first, and then maybe I'll go to Monica after that, to talk about what your organization is doing and give people a sense of the work you're doing, what you're doing now, and also how you see this work kind of unfolding over the next, 5 to 10 years in your efforts to, I think, good point, to continue to do this work in a more systematic and long-term way. So that's a perfect segue. I'll start with you, Kakenya.
Thank you again. At Kakenya's Dream, I think we started as a school, and we have really grown for the last 12 years to be not just a school, but a program that actually also addressed the community and really bringing all the stakeholders to supporting the girl. We are fortunate that we have 2 boarding schools. We have a primary school boarding school, and then we have a high school boarding school. And the boarding school is really critical because it kind of gives girls the opportunity and the space to be able to learn, be able to focus, and be able to be a child. Our focus is mostly on prevention because we know that when we talk about girls' education, what interrupts it is in our community, there's female genital cutting. We are talking about early forced marriages. And that normally happens when the girls are around 9, 10 years old. They are kind of start of the socialization that in their minds, you're no longer a child, as I think, Karim was, you're not a child anymore. You need to dress up a certain way. You need to look down. You need to, don't jump rope. So it's like all these things that are put into a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old to really start building them to believe that they're actually adults. And so that transitions to getting, mutilated and then getting married. So for us, we realize that it's really critical that we start, break those socializations and take in the girls and work with them and say, you're a child. You can jump rope, you can play anything you want to. Like you really start playing with the mind of the child because she is a child, and we need to make them that, they are children. And then with that, I think beyond just the academics, of course, being able to provide teachers that are actually focusing, who are there to knowing that we are here to empower the girl, because there's a whole lot of issues that we need to deal with when the girls comes to school. Is the school safe for them? Are the teachers accepting? So there's a lot of issues that we work with around that. We also work with the parents because we realize that it's a community that these practices have been there for centuries. Most of the girls, their parents have not finished, even primary school. So the expectation is like, oh yeah, the girl is going to get married. I'm going to get the cows because of the dowry, and that's the end of it. But that's not the end of a girl. So we really work with the parents, a lot of education, and that really, we grow, like the parents grow with the child as the programs grows with the child. So it's not, we intervene when they're young, and we take you throughout the whole year as you get into adolescence age. What are the issues, the whole understanding your body, it's the whole issue that we just talked about, that it's not just academics. We have to really focus on the health and that developing the agency for girls to speak for themselves, to know their rights. So it's we've been very fortunate that we are learning that every step of the age and every step, there's a need that each girl needs to be able to speak up, because at the end of the day, it's that space that she needs to be able to know I'm worth, I have a voice, I have something to contribute to the world. So our schools programs do that, but we go beyond that, and we now actually work with other schools and being able to be in 30 different schools in the community and really working with boys. That's another whole programming, because we can't just assume that somehow we empower the girls and we leave the boys who are still traumatizing the girls in the classrooms. So I think our programming is holistic and, really reaching the girls and building that space for them to thrive. And we are very girl-centric, but we have programs for men, programs for boys, but all the idea is to put girls in the center of everybody. So we are here to empower the girl, and she needs to have a community that can accept her as an empowered woman. And so I can talk many more, but I think, we work with the girls from, 9, 8 years old, all the way to the age of 22 years. So we are really looking at you throughout each transitional period, because we don't just say we focus on primary school, we focus on high school. The girl is it's a long process. And that's where I will talk about staying and sustain, and really it takes a generation to break the barriers that we are trying to bury, we're trying to issue. So that's you have to really see the circle come through. And I'm grateful to see some of our students finishing college, getting married, uncut, just all the joy. But that has happened because we have stayed there and we've learned all the way what to do. And we are at a place where we are sharing our work with others and all of that. So that's in a nutshell of what we are doing at Kakenya's Dream. Yeah. You're muted, Stephanie. You're muted, Stephanie.
Stephanie, you're muted.
I would say your passion really shows through, so that's great. Monica, you're next, and then after that, I'll go to Karima and then Bailey with the same question. So, Monica.
Certainly. Thank you so much. So, given the fact that we just celebrated our 110th year of Girl Scouting, and of course, the movement itself has weathered many storms and developed over a long span of time, and recently, of course, as we've all been dealing with the various symptoms and aspects of the pandemic, and recognizing we've all been incredibly resilient and pivoted in terms of being able to still stay connected through this virtual modality, still being able to hold activities and events and such online, but recognizing that that's taken a toll on in so many ways, the feelings of being disconnected. And honestly, now we have, as we've had before, but there's a true crisis in terms of teen mental health issues, suicide concerns. It's a crisis that we are facing. And so honestly, one of the focuses that we have in our council is to address that directly, is to really reinstate a sense of community building, trying to bring our troops, our girls together so that they feel again part of a community, that there are more in-person activities and situations where we are addressing the sense of isolation that many girls are feeling during this a vulnerable time as they're developing. We are working very hard to instate a youth mental health first aid program, which we would like to see developed across our entire council, so that we are not allowing our staff as well as all of our adult volunteers the opportunity to know how to recognize and address those moments of crisis, and also empower our youth to know how to the techniques and the strategies to deal with mental health issues as they arise, and that can be tools that they will use throughout their lives, as well as an understanding of each other and empathy and compassion for others' situations. We've also been doing a tremendous amount of work in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. That's been a major push that we've had, in particular this year with our council, and really ensuring, we believe very strongly, of course, in the Girl Scout movement, and that sense of girl empowerment and girl-led programming, and really wanting to make sure that we are offering it to everyone within our community, building that awareness, of course, of the strengths and the challenges of all of the members of our community. And so that piece, in particular, recognizing gender identity, recognizing that, we have many members throughout our community that identify across the spectrum, and that believe strongly in our girl-led leadership as part of their particular ethos and wanting to be a part of that community as well. And so in all of these ways, we're hoping to really enrich and strengthen our community so that we can celebrate and recognize all of the various contributions of, in particular, the youth members as they are developing into the leaders of tomorrow.
Great. Thank you so much, Monica. Karima, next to you.
Yes, so our organization has a curriculum unique to the Black girl experience, as it was co-developed by Black women and Black girls as well. And so we do that through, we aim to stand in the gap that these Black girls are facing in the schools. And we do that through a continuum approach with help with building soft skills, supplying resources, giving girls opportunities, through emotional restoration and different things like that. We have programs for entrepreneurship building, workforce readiness programs. We have programs in the schools that girls lead a social change project, and they come up with different things that they want to address in the community. And other programs that we have at our branch at our center involve, certificates for training. We have girls who code, so that gives access, technology access to young girls, and they end up getting a certificate for coding. And so girls can be certified in coding, certified in Microsoft, and building these soft skills and giving them the resources needed to persevere in their careers that they aspire to be in, and even, give back to their community. So these girls that come to us, and we help them, build their self-identity and give them a voice and be their advocate for them, as well as in the community and in the schools.
Great. And you work in the United States. Do you work in particular states more than
We are
others?
In the Richmond metropolitan area.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, great. In Virginia.
Yes.
Great. Okay, well, thank you for that. That's, I mean, really impressive. Bailey, to you, and then we'll move to my last question before I open the floor to the others who are attending. So Bailey.
Thanks, Stephanie. Yeah, very excited to share more with you all about the work that Girl Up is doing to make an impact on girls' education. Girl Up, as I mentioned, we're a leadership initiative, and everything that we do is centered in our leadership framework, where we are focused on building qualities to grow someone in their leader of self, looking inward and growing those confidences and those understandings of who we are and what's going on inside, making space for reflection and growth. Then second, leadership of peers. So in our club setting, in our groups where youth are leading their clubs, they're taking action, they're choosing how and when and why they'll activate for gender equality. And then leader of change, where we're looking outward to make, whether that's policy change, whether that's change within a school system, whether that's change within a family. So that's our core leadership framework. We also offer a free open source fundamental leadership course that is online, and that is part of what we call Girl Up Academy. And it's our first and fundamental course that we offer. Again, that's evidence-based, that is focused on positive psychology, and really increasing that leadership identity for anyone who takes our course. We also take it a step forward, and we offer funding directly to youth all over the world, up to $1,000 grants, which is US $1,000 converted. We've been able to make those grants directly to girls all over the world for their projects to increase and further gender equality in their communities. We also offer a host of virtual and in-person events as well, whether that's our signature Girls Leadership course that's offered every July, where we elevate youth voices in equal numbers as adult voices. And that is a 2 to 3 day event that has brought in hundreds of thousands of viewers and participants around the world. We also offer an online community where youth can connect with one another across space and time, thanks to the internet. And we actually have a community right now of over 12,000 members who are connecting with each other, learning. One Girl Up Club might want to activate in a certain way, and they're able to put the question out to the global community and say, has anyone else worked on this? Has anyone else done a similar project? What advice do you have to give to us? What do you recommend? So we are very girl-centered, girl-led, and we also see education about intersectional feminism as a lens through which to view the world. And so we provide access to resources and information and community about feminist issues that are impacting girls in their daily lives. We focus on STEM education, STEM for social good. We focus on sports, gender equity in sports. We have resources and a curriculum so that our girls are able to talk about gender-based violence. We also have programming on sexual and reproductive health rights and justice, and mental health and well-being. So these are our core areas. And then, of course, we also have our cohorts of teen advisors, coalition leaders, and those groups of youth that are invited to participate in our global YSI camps, which we put on with the State Department, Google, Intel, Caterpillar, again, to elevate voices of marginalized youth in the STEM fields as well. So with this wide panoply of events and programming, we really hope that our programming is of interest and useful for youth as they're learning about their gender equality passion and taking their activism for that and for their own education to the next level.
Great. I'm going to ask my final question, but before I do, I want to just tell people, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A, and we will get to as many of them as we can. Another point, we're going to give away 2 copies of my book, but to people who ask questions, so we'll randomly pick from that group, but just know there's an extra incentive to ask a question because you used your voice in this process. So please feel free to type in your questions, and then we will get to those as soon as I wrap up with this last question to the panelists. I have many more and could keep going, but I think obviously you all do too. So we'd love to hear from you, and you can just type it in the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. And if not, I'll just keep asking questions, but I'd prefer not to do that. So actually, my last question here to the group, and I'm going to start, Bailey, we'll just start with you and kind of then go to Karima, is what, here we are, it's 10 years, International Day of the Girl, girls' education, very important today, tomorrow, and always, right? This is kind of a foundational, thing that we need to do for girls around the world. So as you're thinking about it, what are the 2 most important things you think that people can do to support girls' education broadly, to support the work you do, so that we're all kind of moving forward? Again, there are some real commonalities across geography and demography, but there are some very unique things too. So first to you, what are the 2 things you would like people to think about doing to support the greater good and support your work?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I love this question. Girl Up is, of course, a global organization, but I'm actually going to say start local, start hyper local, start talking to the youth in your family, in your community, the children of your friends, and not just the girls. Talk to the boys, talk to gender nonconforming youth, talk about this issue and talk about how access to education has been limited historically and in current times for girls. I think it's really important to have those hyper-local conversations. And then I would also say to get involved with local organizations that that mean a lot to you. So whether that's your local Girl Scout troop, or if you're in Richmond, right? If that's working with Karima, if you're in Kenya, working with Kakenya. And then I think obviously funding is a big need. Getting funding into the hands of youth directly is really important. It's really hard because we talk about, we face this all the time. Girl Up does. Which youth has access to a bank account where a wire transfer can be made? Is there a trusted family member? So I think that combination of getting funding into the hands of youth where you can, but then working with trusted local organizations where you can't.
Great. Karima, over to you and then to Kakenya.
I would say one of the things to do to support would be to just advocate, be a champion for girls in the community at any time, and be able to share resources to young girls, specifically to support our organization, donations. We are a nonprofit organization, so any donation helps us. It helps us keep these resources that we are bringing to these girls, keep them alive. And, I don't know where everyone is joining us from, but we are having our annual Black Girl Rally event this Friday at Virginia Union University. And you can find more information about that on our website, which is just girlsforachange.org. And so it is open to the community. It's open to all attendees. It's going to be a really fun event. So I would just share all the resources and bring people to Girls for a Change.
Great. Kakenya.
Thank you. In addition to all that has already been said, funding is critical. Start in your local community, sharing our work in your social media, and amplifying the voices of girls wherever you can. I think I also want to add that, most of the time we're thinking about financial, but if you're not able to do that, you can also use your talent to support organizations, pro bono work that you can build capacity for different organizations that you're interested in. So use your talent to amplify the work of girls. So
Great. And Monica, and also come on. Oh, I see that. Hopefully that's a question. I'm looking forward to your questions from the audience. Monica.
Thank you. These are all fantastic ideas. And I think I would say, from both ends of the spectrum in that, girls, the youth have, an amazing perspective. Again, they are the leaders of the future. And if you speak directly to them, learn exactly what their experience is, what their perspective is, they are the ones that will help us literally evolve as a species. Honestly, it's that insight into what is inspiring to them, what their needs, what their current challenges are. I think that sometimes adults, we kind of take a look at the situation and we may not necessarily be fully aware of the reality of our young people's experience at this point. And so I think that's why it is so important to give girls a voice, to give them these leadership opportunities so that they can choose their path to make a difference in the world. But then I think on the other side of it is for girls to know that they do have trusted role models, that they can trust adults that will be lifting them up and empowering them and giving them opportunities to shine and to grow and to meet obstacles and challenges head on. That again, we are part of a global community. We are all together in this, really trying to make change for the world and make the world a better place for everyone. And so I think acknowledging that there are these two aspects, it's important to understand, the developmental progression of kids and what they're capable of at different times, but also challenging them to kind of reach above themselves and to really take those steps in terms of self-agency. So of course, getting involved as an adult and being that role model, that that big sister, that source of support and inspiration in all of these fantastic organizations. That's what we need, is that sense of kind of family, that global family, that we will all be there for each other, and recognizing that folks have various needs and we need to be able to support them.
Great. Now we have a lot of questions. So I'm going to take the power of the moderator here, and I'm going to ask the questions. I may not ask each of the four of you to answer each question because I think that'll take a while. So I'm going to kind of pick and choose because I do want to get to these great questions. So one, and I'm going to try to kind of bring them, bring a couple of them together, but I think we have one from Travis, and I'm going to paraphrase a bit. And Karima, I'm going to give this to you first, and then if anyone of the other three would like to weigh in. It's talking about being continuously challenged with creating cohesiveness between teachers, administrators, and the needs of students. What can school staff members, administrators, and parents do to create more sort of cohesiveness and togetherness so that the needs of students are heard and addressed? I think I'll start with you, Karima, and then if any of the other three of you want to weigh in briefly, that would be great.
I would say to create cohesiveness would begin with giving the girls a voice to be allowed so that they can speak up to address what needs to be cohesive. So I think addressing that is the baseline into where to bring cohesiveness, and just educating all of those involved in girls' lives to create that cohesive experience.
Other thoughts on that? I can move to other questions, or anyone want to weigh in a little bit more on that?
I think to add that, I think I would also work on a lot of gender sensitization of like the staff and the teachers. For example, in our community, and like generally our education system is a top down, so the teachers have more power, and the parents of the children doesn't have power. And we worked in a way that we had to change the classroom setup. We worked in a way that we had to allow teach the teachers to accept when a child is asking questions, because most of the time they think that they have all the answers. And I think, as Karima was saying, is that if we can involve the young people in actually finding solutions and listening to them and creating that space for creativity and literally let them lead, it creates a lot of cohesiveness and more togetherness. It's a different generation time, and I think we need to accept that. And if we're really going to create that space for empowerment, they need to have that voice, their voice to be heard.
Well, actually, I think that goes to another question, which I'm going to ask this next question, and maybe I'll go to you, Bailey, because I see you were about to say something. But Heather asked about sort of specific attributes that you see in girls, or you look for in girls in terms of rising as leaders in their communities. And she specifically works with awesome indigenous girls in Panama. But I think this is a broader question, like how do you develop that leadership capacity? And what do you look for to do that? And so Bailey, I'm going to ask you that question, and then if others would like to weigh in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Stephanie. Yes, I think that on the question of bringing together administrators and teachers and youth, and then also on the question of what attributes to look for when finding someone, I think my answer would be that at Grow Up, we really have the philosophy that everyone has leadership potential within them. Every single youth who we are able to reach, and those that we're not as well, has within them their voice. So you'll never see Grow Up describe ourselves as an empowerment program, because we believe that that's not something that we bestow. We don't bestow empowerment on the youth. They have their own voice. And I think what is really needed there, and this can go back to the question about whether that's at school or in your community, is creating safe spaces where adults are saying, we want to hear from you. And even when there's a pushback from the youth, I'm too shy, I don't have anything to add to this, to contribute to this conversation. I think really just holding on to that space and saying, as their adult mentor and as that trusted adult in their life, you do have something to say about this, and we do want to hear from you. and that positive reinforcement that encourages folks to look within. And that aligns very clearly with Girl Up's leadership framework, from which all of our programming is based, and that is to grow the leadership skills and the qualities that we see are necessary to grow as a leader of yourself. So again, using your voice, also reflecting and saying, what are my strengths and weaknesses? And so that I can look very honestly about my own weaknesses and see how I can grow and how I can change in those areas. Also being a leader of peers, so looking to see who is influential, who is someone in your community or in your school that other girls or other youth are looking to, who's setting that pace forward. And then also being that leader of change, at least in the United States right now, I can speak to that as a US citizen and resident. High school girls are using their voices in droves. So whether that is reforms for gun safety, whether that is climate change, the student marches, March for Friday marches for climate, and student walkouts, whether that's the Me Too movement, it really is not challenging in those contexts to find those leaders. And then I think to encourage them and to, as an adult, create a space and be very honest and authentic to say, we actually can't do this without you. We need you.
Great. Other panelists would like to weigh in at all on that question? Okay, I'm going to move. We probably have time for a couple more questions. Don't worry, if we don't get to your question, you're still eligible for the drawing. And by the way, for the person who asked about sharing best practices, we are putting the links to all of the organizations in the chat. So, and we will send that out to you as well. So really happy to get you the information so that you can learn more about the organizations and the great work that they're doing. I want to ask two more questions, I think, and one of them, I'm going to start, I think, maybe Monica, with you. I mean, this is a question, I'm going to broaden it a little. It's from Angela around sort of the impact of early pregnancy on, what is the impact of early pregnancy on girls? I want to also add into that question, how does ensuring that girls stay in school, kind of ensure that there's less early pregnancy, less child marriage? I mean, I'm going to broaden it out a bit. How do we see those linkages? Because I think that's really important to make those linkages. So Monica, I want to start with you on that question, and then others can weigh in. And then I have one last wrap up question before we, from one of our audience members before we go. So Monica, on to you on that.
Certainly. Prior to my work with the Girl Scouts, I taught, actually, I was a music teacher and choir director, and one of the schools that I taught at was inner city Nashville as a middle school general music teacher. And there were, many pregnant 6th and 7th graders. And in speaking with some of them, in some instances, it was, one girl that I spoke with, she was actually wanting a child to be able to take care of because she wanted, that sense of love and family in her life that she didn't feel. And so in terms of, the education piece, in terms of the awareness of the impact, for younger kids where they aren't thinking sort of longer term, they're not thinking broadly, they're not thinking of, beyond that moment of, need or of feeling that connection. We need our young people to realize not only sort of the implications of their actions, but also, again, to feel like they're a part of a community so that they're not making choices that would impact their future, other human beings' futures, and they can see the broader perspective and the broader ramifications of their actions. And you know, I believe, again, if we are providing a sense of community and that sense of nurturing and that sense of awareness of you know, just the broader scope of life, and that knowledge of having a goal, having goals for the future, and the steps that we can take to realize particular goals, that perspective is so important in terms of you know, giving our young people sort of the strength to make good, well-reasoned, rational choices about their future.
Great. And I'm just going to go to this last question because it's a great last question. And anyway, it's from Molly Opinski, who was an intern in my office several years ago. So I want to ask her a question, but I think this is a really great wrap up. And I'm just going to start with you, Kakenya, and then we'll go to Bailey, Monica, and Karima. You know, what is if you're looking forward, what's the #1 change or benchmark of progress that you would like to see in the next 5 years, going to the issue of how to measure impact? So Kakenya.
I think the #1 is, you know, creating time for collaboration. I think we talked about sharing best practices and you know, and collaboration. Most of the time we are caught up with all other deadlines, but we don't create that space for collaborations and funding to go into that. Collaborations and sharing experiences, because that's the only way we can actually all deal with the issues of girls, is to really share and learn from each other and be able to reach more girls. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Bailey.
Yeah, thank you so much. Girl Up has a big, bold, audacious goal, actually. By 2030, we would like to have reached 1 million youth change makers and youth activists. And that's a huge goal for us because in our first 12 years, we've been able to impact the lives of 150,000 youth. So this is going to take a lot of work, and this is going to also take a lot of work on behalf of our new global affiliates and our global teams all over the world. So that is one big, bold, audacious goal that we have, because it's clear that the leaders of today are failing us. And as Monica so adeptly said, you know, it's about our human evolution, and the youth of today, especially girls, are our future and our leaders. So that's where we're hoping to make our biggest impact.
Great. Monica, you're next.
Yes, similarly, at least our Girl Scouts Council Nations Capital, you know, we have similar goals in that we want to broaden our reach within our region. You know, currently we are serving 47,000 youth members, and we've got goals to, you know, expand to 52,000 over the next several years. And so, you know, basically it's that contact, it's that nurturing those connections. It's, you know, bringing people into the community and showing them the power of, you know, these leadership opportunities that every individual can contribute to make the world a better place. And so definitely, yes, it's bringing folks into the community so that they can all partake.
Great. And Karima, the last word for the panel is yours, and then I'll say a couple things before we wrap up.
All right, so where we see our biggest impact and our main goal is to close the gap that these young girls are facing, and to actually see more girls, more women in these male-dominated career fields, and being able to just understand their role and their place and how they have these resources in the community, just like everyone else, and equal opportunities.
Well, great, thank you. I want to thank the 4 panelists, Karima, Kakenya, Bailey, and Monica. Also, we will email who wins the books. And if you sign up for, I have a newsletter. If you sign up for that, you're also going to get a little toolkit that we've done about how to take action the basic steps. And we're more than happy to mail that to you, but there's a link in the chat for signing up for that, as well as a link for all of our great panelists and their organizations and how to be in touch with them. So again, I want to thank all of you for joining. I want to thank the panelists. I feel like this is like a great group because it reaches in so many different places, globally, locally, but raising the point that it all starts with what we can each do to make a change to ensure that everybody has equal access to all of the resources and education that they deserve. So again, thank you to everyone for attending, and thank you to the panelists. It was wonderful. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Great to
Thank you, Stephanie. Bye.
Happy International Day of the Girl.
Yes,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.